Hey gang, welcome back to Inverted Pursuits Laboratory. This week we're going to be taking a look at the EggTimer voice module. This module is used in conjunction with the EggTimer LCD to basically give you a vocal readout of whatever is being transmitted to your LCD screen. So if that is GPS data, it will give you GPS data. If that is telemetry data from an altimeter, it will give you the telemetry data from the altimeter, including altitude, velocity, and other stuff that you can listen to over a headset. So let's get to the build and then we'll show you how it works. All right, so we've got all of our parts here real quick. So taking a look at it, we've got an 8-inch jumper cable for the telemetry module, for the voice module, which we'll be using inside our case. We've got the PCB board. We've got some solder, which we'll set to the side for now, maybe getting into that. And then we've got our bag of parts. Oddly enough, this bag already had a cutout in it, so I'm not quite sure what caused that, but I've got a pile of parts, and we do have an instruction list we'll be going through to verify all of our pieces. But we're gonna get out the IC real quick. It's on its own little piece of foam. So we know we've got the IC, we'll set it off to the side, and we know we've got the circuit board. Those two things already there. A little bit of heat shrink tubing right here, so that's on the list. I know this is our Resinator. It is also on the list. We have a 3-pin right angle header. I have got a 3.5 millimeter earphone jack and accompanying nut. We have brown and clear tape with blue stripe. These are our 47 microfarad capacitors. These guys right here. Then I have brown and clear tape with red stripe. It's this guy here. That guy is our 22 microfarad capacitors. We have brown guys in paper tape. No markings. These are 0.1 microfarads. Pretty much they use a nice classification across them, so they're all pretty much the same from unit to units we're building. I have an 1/8 watt leaded resistor. They're just using it for the leads. This is just like when we built the Quantum. Apparently it's going to be helpful in some way. Not sure how yet. Then I have some 103 resistors, and I have some 2R2 resistors. So we got a lot of little cute resistors and things. So let's go ahead and try and get a little bit better light over here for us. So we're about to start working. Don't forget to cap your X-Acto knives. Alrighty. Apparently the first thing we're going to do is we're starting off with the big boy processor. So we're actually going to be mounting this guy on here. So it mounts in the configuration I have it. So on the edge of this chip there is a little divot, and on this marking there is a little divot. Let's actually get you guys in a lot closer to make this a little bit easier to see. This is a pretty small board we're going to be working on, but the IC comes off and we can see the divot on the IC matches up with the little marking there. And we're going to just gently set it through and work to get all the pins on in real quick. Just gently work them in, and then we want to push down and seat that as flush as we can for all the connector headings, and then we'll flip it over, make sure we've got all of them looking nice and dandy before we start soldering. So got my soldering iron all heated up and cleaned off. So we're going to start with the square pin over here. And we're trying to just apply enough solder and heat to the pin and pad that it takes the solder. We don't want to add too much, otherwise we can damage the IC. And we really don't want to do that, because then we don't have a functional unit. Alright, we're just gently getting these done. We want to make sure we take care to get everything done correctly the first time. Alright, that is all of those pins all soldered up. So we can see all those pins are looking great. Alright, next on the instructions after that is we start mounting resistors and capacitors. So first off, we're going to mount the 0.1 microfarad capacitor. That's located in between the IC on the bottom of the board. So down here we have a 103 spot. Trying to find my tweezers real quick. Oh, I buried them. So right here we have a 103. So the board's actually marked 103, and we also have a C1 next to it. So we're starting with the C1, the capacitor. It is our brown in paper tape capacitor. It is the 0.1 microfarad, this little guy here. Based on the fact they gave us two of them, we should only need one, since EggTimer is known for giving us more than what we need. So hold that off to the side. Start by soldering the pad. We're just going to go right on. Not taking any time with this. All right. That capacitor is quickly and easily mounted. I'm not quite a fan of how that one, there we go. Now it took better. All right, next we're doing the 103 resistor. It mounts so that the top of the board is the side here with the two holes close together. It mounts so it's legible. This one will actually be legible to you guys. I'm finally getting good enough at doing these builds upside down that we can flip it over for you. So my 103. Next thing we're gonna do, come in here. I just realized I put that on backwards of the way I wanted to put it on. So we're gonna quickly flip it around, flip it over, try and get this back on here before I have solder on the pad too long. Still had solder on that pad longer than I wanted to, or heat, I guess I should say, on the pad longer than I wanted to. So solder started to oxidize, and I've just added a little bit of fresh solder to the oxidized solder to hold it together better. So there's the 103 and our 0.1 microfarad on the back there. Next thing we're doing is we're going to mount the 47 microfarad capacitors. They are our clear in blue tape. We're actually going to mount the pair of them. And we'll actually be flipping the board over. And they mount in the spots labeled C47. So let's keep top for you guys up here. The C47 is thus right above the IC, which actually doing it upside down here for me is actually beneficial right now. Take a moment to get the dang capacitors out, since we're actually using both. All right, so initially I'm just holding both capacitors in place, and then we're going to come back in and do the final solder attachment. There we go. So that gets both of the C47s on there, or the 47 microfarads. Next we're doing the 2R2 resistors, which go just above these two here. So we'll take the 2R2 resistors and we'll get two of them out. Again, we will prep the pads as we get it all ready. And again, I want to make sure on the resistors, just because I really like the way it looks, I want everything to be legible in the top to bottom configuration. So top to bottom, left to right, I don't want any text upside down. I like the way it looks that way. Turn it at a slight angle here to help me with soldering these last two connections. Alrighty. 2R2s are on. Next and last on this row, we mount the 22 microfarads, which are our set that came in the clear red tape. And we'll get those out, and they go just above everything. Alrighty. Tin the pads and do this in the same configuration we've done the last two sets. All right. Got those on there. Come in real quick and tip's getting a little dirty. Sorry, clean that tip off. There we go. Instantly takes like a boss. Again, cleaning that tip, easily the most important thing on this whole thing. All right, next we're mounting the resonator. So the resonator comes with 3 straight pins, and we're actually gonna go ahead and bend them. My opinion, the resonator mounts with the text up. And so then I just take the resonator in my pliers, bend myself a 90-degree, and I put those through holes in there. Now I've got little strips of tape floating around on my workbench, but then you're going to want a little strip of tape to hold that little turd in there. The pins will just be peeking out the other side if you did it right. At least that's always my experience, is that they're just peeking out. I'm going to gently fill the holes. All right. Next thing we always want to do with these resonators, you've seen these videos before, I always flip back over and I come in from the other side, very gently come in from the other side, just to mound up a little bit of extra solder. And that is just to ensure that those connections are solid, are as dang solid as they can be. I don't want that resonator going anywhere. Since I have the ability to solder both sides, we do. All right, looks like we're moving on to the earphone jacks. So the earphone jack goes right here and is this big guy. So according to all of this, we'll be going in that way with this big pin facing up. And I am showing to go ahead and take this pin here and gently bend it down. We're going to end up using the lead from this resistor to solder between the pin here on the side and this little C marking on the board. But what we're going to do is we're going to flip this over, and we're actually going to gently bend these tabs out to give us a good mounting spot. So initially we are going to tack one side, we're going to check for square, and then we'll tack the other side. This is probably not going to go as smoothly as I would like it to go because I've got some very big pins to adhere. Okay, that's held on. Let's bend and tack the opposing side. I'm going to go and add some extra solder to the opposing side. So get this warmed up, and I'm just kind of going to jump back and forth. On the side I feel like tacking at that moment. All right, so we got those guys tacked in place there real quick. So we'll clip the excess leads real quick on these. Just come in with clippers and we clip the leads. Now on top, we're actually going to be using our 1/8 watt wire lead thing to jump between these 2 points. So let's verify how they're doing this. Yep, they're soldering to the C point. So we've got it lined up there. And we're just gonna be coming in here on the bottom and tacking that on, and then up here on top and just kind of fill in that turd. So before I go any further, I'm just going to take this and clip it off. And you can see on top here, we have that soldered, and on the bottom, oh, the solder actually flowed through. So we actually have a perfect little solder bubble here on our C. And now we have the audio jack mounted. All right, so next we're gonna mount the 3-pin header. So the 3-pin header is the little guy here, and it goes right there. There are various ways sometimes you wanna mount things, like sometimes we mount things off the back. On this one, they're not really recommending you mount it a different way than what they're showing. Oftentimes they'll be like, well, it can be mounted this way, or like one of 8 different ways. And since they're not doing that, I'm going to do exactly what they tell me to do for once. Just this time. Don't worry, guys. It's not going to be consistent. And so we're going to come in here, and I'm going to clean my tip real quick. We're going to just solder these 3 pins. Just like we solder every other pin set, and magically like that we have it all attached. Now we're actually going to back out real quick a bit because this next part is kind of weird, but we're going to try and keep as much of this in focus as we can. So what we're actually working on now is attaching the wires to the board. So we're actually going to come in with our pliers and basically break this connector on one side so that we can do whatever we want with it. And so I'm not worried about trying to salvage this connector at the moment. I am just going to break off these tabs on the back that are what's holding the pins I need out in. So that comes off and all 3 pins slide out. So the way we're actually going to go about doing this, we're going to clip off the connector. So the white connector is the only one we actually need. So the other 2, we're actually going to clip them, which feels so wrong. We're actually going to end up soldering the red wires to the board. So we're going to clip the 2 connections, and I'm going to grab my wire strippers I didn't have out. and strip a little bit of the wire visible in order to make this solder joint. So the red and black are actually going into our power, if I'm reading that correctly, and I just smacked the lens. Did not want to do that. So then we're actually going to take this piece of tubing. We're going to cut about 3/8 of an inch off using my oh so accurate board. It's about like that. And this guy's going to go over this pin connection here to seal it off. So now we actually want to shrink the heat tubing around this pin. Usually you use a heat gun on low. I already have my soldering iron on low because soldering some of these components requires that. And just gently rubbing the heat shrink on there will achieve the same result. So what we're going to do now is take, on the board we've got a 5-volt and a ground. We're actually going to run the 5-volt and ground underneath the board and solder it on from below. So the ground and 5-volt. Hui. We're also going to twist the wires together to ensure that they don't come apart. Really don't want frayed wire edges making shorts or something. So red goes into the 5-volt pin socket. Black goes into the ground. And then we're gonna actually go ahead and tape these wires on the back to hold them in place while we do these initial solder connections. So they say to solder it on whichever side of the board will be easiest to access. Since I'm going to be bolting the top face of the board to a panel, I want all the wiring, as much as I can anyway, on the back side, which is why we're soldering those on the back. Now, I could argue that I should have flipped the 3-pin connector then to the other side, but I'm not overly concerned about that because then all we do with this connector is we plug it in on there. All right, so if you've never actually mounted one of these, it's actually fairly straightforward. I say that as I'm realizing I have to get my big aux box apart. All right, gang, so the telemetry module will mount on the inside of our box here. It'll end up mounting in this magical little location, which it looks like I've got some hole alignment issues. Not the end of the world, but not my favorite thing to deal with. So we're just gonna toss some quick spacers together and 440 nuts to get the basics mounted here real quick. So these are just the same spacers I used on all my LCD screens, which you can find on the link online for this box. I'll also link it down in the description below to make it easier for you all to find. It's my custom remix on an existing LCD box. I've got a whole video on how this thing functions. So, check it out. All right. So we roughly line that up. The pin header here connects to our out 5-volt ground 3-pin here. White on top, red in middle, black on bottom. And so that will result in the proper connections being made that we need made. And then this is our power. So from the front side, we have our audio jack actually sticking out, which is wonderful. It is perfectly located. I'm actually going to go ahead and put in one more spacer since I've got a third spacer for this board. Sorry, I'm doing it off screen, guys. Got a third spacer there, and I want to make sure that this aux board isn't going anywhere as I try to plug audio devices in and out of it. So perfect. All right, so now from the front, doesn't quite work to put the bezel that they gave you on there. You can try, but like that's probably about as good as you're gonna get. And there's a little bit of misalignment here and there. Now, if we want to go ahead and test the function of this, we could plug in a battery and turn it on, which we will do here in a moment, as soon as I get an altimeter prepped for us to pair with and our telemetry module. All right, gang. So we have got an EggTimer Quantum hooked up here. These are my air quotes loads. The proper load to use would be a Christmas light. That's really what they recommend. But even most modern Christmas lights don't have a great load here. Since I'm only going to be arming it for a brief moment, I'm not going to be arming it in test mode, I'm okay just using a quick jumper. I have my telemetry module also hooked in here on the back. I did try to use this in a flight quite recently and made the mistake of putting a steel rod next to it, so this didn't actually transmit any data to me. But we're going to go ahead and turn on the Quantum real quick. Alright, so that's the Quantum going live. So now I'm going to come over onto my phone and real quick try and connect to the Quantum's flight computer. So the Quantum flight computer has to be armed, and it's armed via a Wi-Fi browser, which I have right here. This is flight summary. Oh boy. Alright, so here is the current status. Drogue charges are off. There we go. So you heard the beep of the altimeter. That means it read the web page being connected. You can see that our shorts are letting us see the thing is on. We get a validation code, and the current status is disarmed. Over here, I've got this bad boy set up. So we'll turn it on. I've got the antenna on here, so turning it on is not a bad thing. Let's see what we got for our values. Should just go to a ghosted 1. Okay, it does. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and arm the altimeter. It's going to start making a lot of noise. Okay, so it does that 3 beep, and then it'll start to chirp, which is going to get very obnoxious. But there we go. So the moment it starts to chirp, we start to get data. So we get some of the data related to altitude, and we can see it's not gone anywhere. And a lot of the screens will actually appear to be empty until we lift off. So The rapid beeping is that everything's connected, and we are getting full signal as we should, and the box is beeping. So unfortunately, I don't have another flight until like March to be able to show how this works. Hopefully in March I'll be able to fly this on a rocket and kind of do a quick video just showing what this actual display data looks like in flight. Also, unfortunately, it does not spit out audio, but we can connect a speaker to it real quick and take a look at what it reads. Unfortunately, we're going to have to keep listening to that screaming sound, which drives me nuts. Alright, so we're using my computer speakers here real quick, which you can hear. And so we're going to plug in the computer speakers.
Altimeter ready for launch.
There you go. So it just told us the altimeter is ready for launch. So that's all the info we have until liftoff. Basically, till then, we've just got these blank screens. As soon as we were to lift off, it would start spitting out
Ready for launch.
altitude and velocity. But that tells us that our audio board is working inside this box, and kind of gives you a quick idea of how the audio board connects to your LCD and what kind of information it can give you. We'll go ahead and unplug that so it doesn't keep telling us altimeter ready for launch. But we'll go ahead and turn off this box. We're going to come back over here real quick, and I'm going to disarm the Quantum. This is the proper procedure for disarming, is that I actually get a disarm button, and it kind of freaks out when we do this. But now we're back in a disarmed state, and we can power off the unit. So we will power off the unit real quick. Come back here. We got a screw switch. The unit is now powered off, and everything is safe. Thanks for watching, gang. I hope you really enjoyed seeing how the EggTimer voice module went together. If you're interested in helping support the channel, please consider liking and subscribing. I'll see you all in the next video.